Hello, thank you for joining this Careers Employability Service introduction to the top 10 employability skills as identified by graduate employers. In this following short video, we're going to be looking at one of those specific skills, which is collaboration or showing a collaborative way of working. And we call this one of the top employability skills that's part of the GAME. Now, GAME, as you can see on the screen, stands for Graduate Attributes Matrix for Employability. So a bit of a mouthful. However, it is very important because this has been designed and put together by graduate employers, essentially. So we need to be aware of what is it that they are looking for and what examples and evidence do we need to be showing as graduates, as undergraduates, in terms of gaining graduate roles, whether that be a graduate job, graduate scheme. Okay, so being collaborative, showing collaboration. Why is it so important? And what is it? Well, really, essentially, it is just working with others. It's essentially using your communication skills and also being proactive to want to get involved, working on projects, working on tasks with others. And you're working towards a shared purpose. But that involves an awful lot of different things and skills within that alone. You know, we're looking at sharing information. We're trying to understand where other people are coming from, what's their agenda, what motivates them. So there's lots involved in collaboration and being collaborative. But the reality is it works very well. And we have to work in those kind of environments typically within the workplace as well. As you can see there, well over half of all employers reported that they did feel happier and they felt more productive whilst collaborating with others on projects or tasks. And this is really important for an employer because that does typically mean that they have more impactful responses from their staff team and more successful impact typically as well. So it is very important part of the whole process. So what could you be doing and how can you be demonstrating collaboration? Because we know it is so important. Well, really the key thing is to look at being involved in team activities and projects. And that could be things that you are already involved with now or have been in the past, whether that's in university, college, placements, voluntary work, part-time jobs, full-time jobs. There's lots and lots of places where you could be pulling these key experiences from. And it's a real interesting way to get across in context how you do practice being open-minded, how you have encouraged ideas and discussion with other colleagues. And this in turn obviously helps you to demonstrate how you have had an impact and contributed to successes, whether that be task or group successes in the past. So it's a very important skill and attribute to be able to demonstrate in terms of your career success and progression. So what other things could you be doing? Well, there's lots, to be honest. Anything that you see on their screen now is a potential activity or opportunity to develop, demonstrate, being collaborative and showing those key skills involved in that. And they can come, again, from a wide range of sources. So do be on the lookout for potential opportunities to further demonstrate your skills in this area. And indeed, all of the top 10 employability skills, taking hold of opportunities in any of these types of areas will always be a very, very positive way to demonstrate any of the top 10 employability skills that you will come across on our GAME webinar series. Here's just a few that we have perhaps within the university, but also outside of the university to consider. We have a career passport. Now, this is a package, if you like, of lots of different activities, events, networks, tasks which are designed to demonstrate and also develop all of those top 10 key employability skills, including showing collaboration, being collaborative. We have a whole range of events, and that could be networking events, it could be masterclasses on our employability workshop and events. And you can find all of these things on Student Hub, which I will show you at the end of this short webinar. There's also external things which you have access to, and that could be looking at graduate platforms like Bright Network, GradCracker. Some are better than others, depending on the sector that you're interested in working in. However, they all have very useful links and networks and forums potentially that you could be joining here. And that also must be mentioned that LinkedIn is a great source to find any opportunities to get involved in projects, network with groups, speak directly with career professionals in your field of interest. Lots of opportunities come from LinkedIn. However, it's important to make sure you optimize your LinkedIn in the right way. So I would urge you, if you're new to LinkedIn, please do feel free again to use the Careers and Employability Service to help you to develop that and get you on the right track on that side of things. So that's just a few ideas of where you can go, what you can use to develop your collaboration communication skills. Here's a few more. Again, you could be looking at work-based learning opportunities. They could be remote, such as OpenLearn, FutureLearn, Forage, Coursera. These are very useful, well put together courses, training courses. Typically, a lot of them are free as well, which is always a bonus. Job simulations, projects that you can do remotely online. You may want to look at volunteering platforms and placement platforms. You can get some good results from Reach volunteering, Do It, and Charity Job, which is really taking into account all of those massive amounts of organizations in the charity sector, which offer paid, but also placement and internship-based opportunities as well. So lots and lots to be looking at there. So demonstrating collaborative skills, we know why it's important, but it's also important to take time out. So it isn't just about having the experience, although that is absolutely essential. It's also about taking time out to understand your role within the situations that you have been a part of. And that will ultimately help you to kind of relate how you might change or improve certain skill areas or awareness. And that's something, again, which graduate employers really do value, because somebody who's self-aware in terms of how they have collaborated in the past and what strategies have typically worked, how they've overcome challenges, these are consistently requested in any type of interview or assessment center. So the more time you've reflected on these things, the stronger you will be in those application and recruitment processes in the future as well. Some other resources on Student Hub that you may want to be aware of, because they're very useful for one, is looking at those kind of side of things. So how do you demonstrate these skills in your CV, in your applications? We have resources such as CareerSet, cover letter builders, optimizing your LinkedIn profile. So these are all resources which you can have access to directly from anywhere, essentially. And they will help you with those processes, as well as the careers advisors in the Careers and Employment Service. Okay, we have a list of events and workshops and training and things like that also on Student Hub. And for those that are going further down into the recruitment process, maybe you're getting towards an interview assessment center, we have a whole raft of assessment center practice tests. And also we offer mock interview preparation and mock interviews as well to help prepare you for those things. So finally, here is the link to the homepage of Student Hub, which is, as I say, the careers and employability platform. And you will see all of those things and a lot more are all covered in this platform here. Okay, so please do take your time, have a look through if you haven't already. And I would suggest you just picking out a couple of key resources for yourself and just having a go. You can then use that for perhaps a careers appointment to delve a little bit deeper into, well, how am I going to show my collaborative skills and aptitudes, and what kind of activities or work-based learning opportunities are there out there for me? And perhaps you also might want to then follow up with, how can I develop my application writing, my CV, and interview practice as well? So they all follow on one from the other, and it was just important really to know where to go and who to speak with. So you can always make appointments via Student Hub on the appointments tab at the top here. Okay, so thank you for listening. This is one in a series of 10 short webinars around the top 10 employability skills. So do look out for the other 9. And we look forward to seeing you in the Careers and Employability Service sometime soon. Thank you now. Bye-bye.